We're now 3 days away from a possible shutdown of the federal government. There aren't signals yet it'll be averted this time. Republicans in the House passed their version of a continuing resolution spending plan to keep the government running. It failed in the Senate because Republicans need some support from Democrats to clear the 60-vote threshold that avoids a filibuster. So Democrats are holding a line on health care issues that are important to them. They say they won't go along with the continuing resolution unless it extends those subsidies for insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act. Democrats and Republicans are already pointing fingers at each other in case there is a shutdown. This latest game of political chicken is on schedule to come to a head at the end of the month. That, as we indicated, rests with the Senate. We'll get into that this morning with Illinois Congressman Sorensen. He joins us for a conversation. Welcome back to the program, Congressman.
Always good to be with you.
I mentioned earlier the latest proposal for a continuing resolution passed the House because there is no filibuster there. This will come down to whether Democrats in the Senate will go along without an extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, look, I mean, it's, as you said, it's a political game of chicken, but let's understand that the American people deserve a government that is fully funded, a government that does not shut down because of political differences. And so
it's happened before.
It has happened before, and you know what? I think we're okay hating the fact that fingers get pointed at one another. We need to make sure that we're doing the job of the people, and that's keeping the government open. The trouble here in this Congress versus the last Congress, Jim, is a reluctance from those on the other side to work together. And you could say, well, that's because the Republicans own the House of Representatives, own the Senate, own the presidency. They don't have to work with us. But here's the thing, they do. In order to get the 60 votes in the Senate, the Republicans have to work with Democrats. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, why aren't they? Why are they allowing politics to rule versus working with Democrats and to meet in the middle?
What do you think is going to happen? What's your sense of it at this point?
Well, look, I mean, I'm going back to Washington, D.C. Here tomorrow because here we're right up toward the October 1st deadline because we have to be there ready to vote. And our Democratic leadership says every Democratic member is going to be ready to vote, even though we're not scheduled for votes for another week.
Now, Democrats, we know historically, give in when push comes to shove in this situation. Why should anyone think it'll be different this time?
Well, I mean, look, that's what we saw last March, right? With that continuing resolution, we wanted to make sure that we had a seat at the table to be able to work through in this case. And they have chosen, the Republicans in the House GOP have chosen not to do this. And there will be ramifications for real people. I want to make sure that the veteran services continue. I want to make sure that our military continues to get paid. We need a farm bill across the table. And it's not so much that the House GOP has had the door closed to the Agriculture Committee. Now, if we go into government shutdown, the door gets closed and locked. Our farmers are in crisis mode. They can't afford for the door to be locked.
There's this risk-reward that both parties play here. If it works out for them within the public's view of things, how much of a political risk would it be for the Democrats to let the government shut down? Whereas you've expected that the public will turn against the Republicans and something like that.
So I've always been of the belief that you show your work, right? And so that's what I have done in my time in Congress, is do the things that are right for the district, work with Republicans at every point that I can, and show my work. But when there is a government shutdown, there is no work to be shown. And people are going to get hurt. People are struggling right now. Nobody's lowering the cost of groceries. Where's Donald Trump and that promise that he had to lower the cost of groceries? Instead, we're going to go into a government shutdown.
But are you worried about what the ramifications are for your party next year with control of Congress on the line? If, let's say, the Democrats get blamed for the shutdown, which certainly each party is going to blame the other if there is a shutdown.
Right, and so I think that is the perception of the people. But I'm working to make sure that we're solving the problems as opposed to causing the problems, because the Republicans are in control. They will own the government shutdown if it happens.
So we're all aware of the recent political violence. We're going to change subjects here. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of a Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband, the arson at the home of Pennsylvania's governor, the assassination attempts that targeted Donald Trump, and more than that. We can go back just a few years. There's been several more instances. What is the political climate in the House right now in light of all this?
Well, first things first, you know, I believe that we do need to pause, and we do need to say, especially to the Kirk family, to mourn. And so I believe that that was right over the past weekend to do that. But this cannot be an inflection point that ignites more political violence. We have to stand up against political violence every time that it occurs. And if we don't, then we're just going to feed this to continue. This is exactly what we can't do. We have to work together. We have to solve our differences, and we need to do that in Washington, as opposed to pointing fingers or saying you are to blame for this and then you're to blame for that.
What do you think about all that finger pointing?
It's absurd. We shouldn't be doing that. We should find ways that we can meet in the middle, or find ways, if we can't meet in the middle, to say that there's a give and take. There's a problem in our politics today if we can't do that.
Have you received death threats personally?
I don't want to bring those out into the public spotlight, but certainly we're doing everything we can as far as security. In this district, I'm so grateful that I get to be in Congress. I'm one of the very few that goes there without a background of having a political baggage. I went to Washington without a carry-on, right? So I can be a different kind of candidate that can work across the aisle, but still stand up with my big D Democratic ideals.
Well, you talk about the security because members of the House recently had their monthly allowance to pay for security double from $5,000 to $10,000 a month. That's an increase of $26 million a year, paid for by the American taxpayers. Do you agree with that move, and what does that increase allow you to do?
Well, look, we've got to make sure that we are secure at home. When I am in Washington, D.C., there are so many members of Congress that have families and small children at home, and those people have had death threats.
So you agree with the move to raise the security allowance, I see.
We need to make sure that we can take care of our families.
So that's a yes. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. We have to make sure that we can take care of our families at home. But I'm lucky that I live in a place where we tend to be okay with one another. We tend to live neighbor by neighbor in a diverse neighborhood, and that's kind of one of the things that makes us great.
Does it change things for you in any way?
No, I'm careful all the time, but also I haven't been at the center of attention with a lot of these things. However, I do take votes from time to time that the GOP doesn't like, or that there are folks in the Democratic Party that they don't like, and so I listen to the discussions too.
There's something that changed subjects once again, something that we haven't talked much. I haven't talked a lot with Congress members about, but there's something that seems to be overshadowed by the issues making national headlines, and that's artificial intelligence. It is advancing faster than most people realize. Is this getting any attention in Congress?
Well, look, it must. In fact,
But is it? You say it must, but is it?
So I'm leading on it to make sure that when you get a phone call and somebody's using artificial intelligence, that much like a spam call is identified on your caller ID, this will say AI call. Because I talk with sheriffs who have, there are so many senior citizens in our communities that are getting duped. Look, if someone calls up my mom and my dad, who are 79 years old, and somebody is using my voice to say, I need help, Mom, my mom will do it. We have to protect consumers. I have to protect my neighbors. That's what this legislation is about. But as far as AI as a whole,
that's much bigger than that.
We need to do a lot more.
You talked about the scamming angle of this. We focused a lot of last week's program on AI. This is why I bring it up. I spoke with a policy analyst for an organization that tracks artificial intelligence and the good and the bad that go with it, because there are positive aspects of artificial intelligence. We can all agree on that. But he said the developers of the technology are designing it in a way to make it uncontrollable. So let that sink in for a second. He argues that heightens the need for government regulation. I guess what role should government play, and what type of regulations would you support? You talked about the one thing we're getting relating to the scam calls, but when we talk about so many other things, chat bots and the like, and robots even now taking control. There's all these movies from our childhood come up here too. Yes. And science fiction is becoming science fact in a lot of ways.
I look at one place that Congress has a role, and that is with social media. Making sure that social media isn't driving our entire electorate, our entire society in the wrong direction. And they are learning so much about who we are individually using artificial intelligence that they're serving up information. And I worry, especially when we talk about political division and political violence, that the bots and the algorithms in social media are going to push us to the brink. And so we do need to make sure that social media companies are held liable too.
That's what I'm talking about specifically because we talk about whether or not we're food products or other things that you buy, hammers and screws and whatever, product liability. Is there a product liability aspect to artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we do need to make sure that there's more government oversight, especially in instances where we could see additional violence or people succumbing to sinister things where they give out their money or their information.
Illinois Congressman Eric Sorensen, thanks for the conversation. Good luck with everything in D.C.
Good to be with you, Jim, as always.
That brings us to our question of the week. What concerns you about a possible shutdown of the federal government? You can send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the local 4 News WHBF TV page or on my page.